Okay. I'm just sitting where my wife told me to sit.
What's that?
Julia said sit there, so I sat here. Then she ran away.
I thought she making sure you're doing okay there.
Oh, she's gone. She's somewhere else in the house. It's a big house. I've no idea where she is.
So we are live, and I'll start us off. So hi everyone. If you're on Facebook and you're currently looking at Pensioners for Independence National Hub's Facebook group, then you'll see there's now a live video coming into the page. My name is Marlene Halliday. I'm involved with the national group, and welcome to this evening's live stream to our Facebook page. And the topic for the evening is postal voting. Is it to be trusted? So I'm here with some members of Pensioners for Indy. We've got Alan Logue with us. Alan's co-convener of the Pensioners for Indy National Group. Jim Stamper is in the Greater Glasgow Group. Jane Pern is from our Celtic group, and Daniel Laurie is co-convener of the Edinburgh and Lothians group. And all of us are joined by Greg Drysdale and Gerry McLaughlan, who are both members of Yes Stirling. So Greg and Gerry are the creators of some short videos about the postal voting system. The videos are very entertaining, but also very seriously meet the various concerns that circulate about postal voting. And yeah, while some of those concerns might well be valid, some of them are definitely not valid. I know that some of the members of our Pensioners for Indy share some of those concerns. Actually, I know some of the people here share those concerns. And no doubt other older voters do. But the thing about us older voters is that we do vote. So we want as many of us out there voting as possible. And if that means using the postal votes, that'd be great. So I'm going to hand over to Greg and Gerry. I think it's Gerry.
I'm going first.
What made the pair of you turn your hand to videos?
We got fed up getting beat in elections. That's the bottom line. Although yes, I've been involved in the SNP in elections, I have to say all my adult life, which is a long time. But we'll stick to the times I've been in Stirling. I've only been in Stirling 40 years. I'm long enough to remember Connaughty and Forsyth, and when the SNP were getting 9% of the vote in Stirling. I've sat in Albert Hall many a night watching, firstly, Labour getting crushed by the postal vote coming in by the Conservatives, and then more recently, us losing elections. I mean, the SNP losing elections because we'd won the vote in the day, but when the postal vote got counted, again, it went overwhelmingly to the Conservative Party. So I get fed up losing elections because there's a couple of simple facts, right? 90 people who have postal votes vote. It's as simple as that. Over 90% of people who get a postal vote vote, and they invariably vote very quickly. Usually, when the ballot paper comes in on the Thursday, they fill it in and it's posted on the Friday. The other thing about postal votes is whether you like it or not, and we've just done a new video here in promotion of Evelyn Tweed, our candidate here in Stirling. Bruce Crawford standing down. Bruce has been in Parliament for 21 years. When Bruce got elected in 1999, the postal vote made up 2%. It was 1.9% of the votes cast in 1999 was postal. The last time Bruce stood, in 2016, it was 22% of the vote cast. We anticipate this time round, the postal vote will be, it could be as high as 50, but it's likely to be about 35 or 40% of the votes cast will be postal votes. Now, whether you like them, hate them, don't believe in them, whatever it is, they are here. So we decided we got fed up beating them. So we were going to make sure, and the other myth you've got to kill is that independent supporters somehow are more reliable in voting than ordinary voters. I'm sorry, it is not true. I'm talking as a campaign organiser. And I go back and check marked up registers 6 months. I'm one of these geeks that goes back and checks the marked up registers 6 months after the election. So I know if Mrs. So-and-so at 22 High Street, who said she was voting for me, or Mr. So-and-so at 27 High Street said he was voting for me, I know if they've voted. Now, I don't know if they've voted for me, but I know whether they've voted or not. And I know the independence voters the turnout amongst independence voters was no higher than the turnout without the unionist force, right? So we decided that we had to sort of work hard and get in. And I suppose the final thing that pushes us over the edge and why we moved to the videos, because we've been campaigning in Stirling for postal votes for a long time. But the 2015, it was 2015, Greg? Was that Steve Paterson's one, or was it 2000? 2017?
25th, 17, yeah. When
17, when there was a snap election, and we had a sitting MP here, Stephen Patterson, and we lost that election by 148 votes. On the day of the vote, it was torrential rain. I've never been so wet in my life. It was so bad we nipped up to JJ Sports and bought 20 umbrellas at £3.25 or something like that. It was so bad. And then after 2 hours, we threw the umbrellas away because it was still too wet. And we lost that election by 148 votes. And guess what part of the vote we lost that day? The postal vote. So that's why we started looking at it. And I have to say, last year, Alan Smith elected here, we won the postal ballot. Now, that brings you on to how do we know we win the postal ballot? Because we, like everybody else, we monitor everything. And I suppose the other thing, I know there's lots of, so that's why I get involved. I should maybe let other people get away. But that's why I get fed up getting beat, and I wanted us to win it. And especially when it comes to district elections, when it comes to council elections, you think the number of council elections independence candidates have lost because the turnout in a council election may only be 40%. But the number of postal votes is still the same. If you've got a council ward of 9,000 and there's 3,500 are postal voters, that 3,500, that'll be nearly 3,000 of them will vote on a council election. That's a big chunk of vote, right? So I'll stop at that point. That's why we get involved. We can then move on to people's concerns, okay?
Okay, good. And Greg, do you want to add anything about that? Because you've both been involved doing these wee videos.
Yeah. Well, Gerry came up to me one night and said, could we do a video that's a wee bit like the Smith and Jones, remember the two heads when they're discussing? Yeah. We could do something like that, doing about the postal vote. So that's how it began. And then we realised that despite I have a bit of an acting background,
I don't have.
Neither of us were going to be able to remember everything that we wanted to say in one shot with just two heads. So that's when we came up with the idea of illustrating it with pictures and graphics and having two guys having a conversation in the coffee shop. And the idea was, instead of, if you know, in the Mel Smith and Gerfries Jones thing, they're both a bit daft and one's dafter than the other. Gerry, we decided to just play our own parts. Gerry was going to be the clever one that knew stuff, and I was going to be the one that believed all the conspiracy stuff. And that's how we went for it. So we just started writing out ideas and drafting things out. And things came clear, things that were going to work. And it actually took us from the beginning of the idea to getting the script together that we're happy with, and then illustrating it with the pictures and everything. We made a part 1 and a part 2. It took a year. So
took a year. I mean, I think part of that was I think you made me do 15 retakes on one word. I think I seem to remember at one time.
Yeah, you just always have to get it just.
Yeah,
I can be a
absolutely
bit
right. Yeah. So have they been? I mean, so given that you two, or at least Gerry, monitors everything, have you been monitoring how many folk have watched the videos and
He's the expert in that.
Well, I don't know about the expert, but as I admin the Yes Stirling page as well, and we've got a huge number of people, members that clock in, and some posts go right through the roof. And I didn't check up from memory, Gerry, you actually do remember how many times it's been watched, don't you? From YouTube account and the
It was tens of thousands the last time. I think we're over there.
said it was thousands anyway.
It was tens of thousands that got
Yeah,
picked
okay.
up. It's infamy. We are now recognised almost as that. We are down as the secret, and I always get confused as it MI5, MI6, or MI7 or others. We're the secret infiltrators have been sent in to persuade everybody that postal votes are safe so that they can get all sent down to London and deemed open and changed. We're the guys. You've now got put faces to the Secret Service folk.
We look capable, don't we?
If only I had a government pension, I'd be quite happy. No, I wouldn't.
So maybe it's time we brought in the other folk who are here with me from Pensioners for India, and should we just sort of maybe have a couple of sentences each and just
I lost connection for a minute.
You froze. I thought that's a really good. You were like that.
Yeah, no, you froze. We're back in. We should be back.
That's good. Should we just maybe each of us, the rest of us here, just say a little bit about our own, where we stand? I don't know if we've got any doubts or if we've signed up for a postal vote. Do you want, Alan? Do you want to go? Great.
Say my Tipmsworth. I agree with Gary, sorry, that we need to use the postal vote. The Tories have used it previously to very good effect. We've got to get the word out to our members to get the forms and use it. Each of us have got some concerns about it. Until we're told how it all works and how it can be monitored, there will be reservations. But I still think, I agree with Gerry, that we should be using it.
Yep. Alan was saying to me earlier that he just has to kind of more or less go across the road and he gets to his polling station. So he reckons he could crawl there if necessary. You know.
I don't like when obviously we're well. One of the reasons why we did this, because I've been involved in actively political parties by SNP for decades. I know all the concerns. I do realise this. I want to give. I can shoot some things down. First, the 2014 referendum. That's the one that seems to have got everybody.
Listen, Gerry, I'll just interrupt you, mate, before we get on to that. Can we just maybe?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What other folk? Who wants to go next? Jim, great.
Right. I must admit, I was quite involved at the count at the end of the 2014 referendum, and was quite convinced after it that the postal vote was, that had been fixed. But my views on that have changed totally. Part of the reason was, the reason I was doubtful about it was the extent that it varied, the postal vote varied from the polling station vote. But when you think about it, a large proportion of the postal vote was older people, and they tended to be the people who voted no. So that was one part of it. So that kind of overcame part of my doubts. But the other part was when I realised to what extent the other parties had got the postal vote out, as opposed to us who didn't get the postal vote out. And when you look at the two of them together, it basically, the proportional vote between the two began to make a lot of sense. I mean, the other thing too I've looked into recently, or more recently, has been the actual legislation that covers voting, and the fact that every person who's standing in an election can have their own agents there at the postal vote. They can monitor what's happening at the postal vote. And one of the most important aspects of that, I think, is that they are actually entitled to be there for same as the polling stations. You're entitled to be there at the start. Make sure that the boxes are empty before they're sealed. And then when the thing's finished at the evening, you as an agent are entitled to put your seal on the box as well, which makes sure that no more votes can be added. And then when it gets to the count, the people, our counting agents, can see these boxes being opened, so they can see that they've not been tampered with. If they had been tampered with, your seal wouldn't be there, or So when you start looking at all that kind of thing, I'm more and more convinced that there isn't any way that they can fiddle the postal vote. I just think it's really important that we get it out. And the other thing is, if you have any doubts about, will I bother putting a postal vote in or not, if you think you have any doubts that you appear on the day, then you're better voting, but postally than not ending up not voting for some reason. So I think it's really important that as many people as possible get their vote in. And even if you still have doubts, if you don't use your vote, surely that makes it more prone to somebody else using it instead. If you actually use it, they can't use it. So get out there and vote and do a postal vote.
Oh, that's a pretty good. Got a lot of interesting stuff in that, Jim. We'll need to come back to some of it. And Jane, do you want to tell us what you think?
Yeah, I hadn't really given it much thought until back end of last year when I saw that it was the Democrats' postal votes in America that swung it. And I thought, there's something interesting going on here. And, I sort of had my doubts and I thought, how safe is it? How secure is it? But this time I decided to apply for a postal vote. And I just really want to be sure before I sort of pitch it to the rest of my group. I want to be sure that I've got the facts right and that I can reassure people about the safety and security of it. Because, if it's raining torrentially on the day or, grandchildren get sick or whatever. I mean, those are the sort of scenarios that I can put to our members and say, are you sure you're going to get to a polling station? And if you're not 100% sure, then think about postal vote.
Yep. Good. Daniel, that brings us round to you.
Yes, I managed to lose you completely twice before I was helped by my associate. Here I am. Anyway, my thoughts on postal votes were always that, can we trust this? Because I think it's open to corruption because they send the postal votes to Carlisle to count them, etc. You hear all these wee stories. And I must admit, I watched the boys' 2 videos, 1 and 2. I watched them both yesterday, and I'm now converted. Although I do have my voting papers for this year, but I think we should, in what time we have left, to actually obtain postal voters. I think as a co-convener through here in Edinburgh, I'm more than happy to write to the group with immediate effect and say, if you've not got a postal vote and you fancy it, do it now.
Yep.
That, to be honest, is it.
That's fantastic.
Can I put a rider on that, Daniel? Just if the consensus is for the group that were agreed, I would put it out to the national membership and cover
great idea.
And say, look, think about it.
Great idea.
Point them to this video and such like.
Yep. Perfect idea.
So that's great. Look, you've got some converts already between you, Gerry, and you may have the whole of Edinburgh and Lothians come, starting off. I'll just finish off. I've never had a postal. My husband has a postal vote. I've never had a postal vote because I just like going there and putting the cross on and sticking it in the box. And however, given the circumstances we're all in just now, I thought, okay, probably it's probably more sensible to. So I have sent off and applied for one. Unfortunately, the other day, my normal postal vote came through the post with nothing on it about me having a postal vote. So I think they've kind of crossed in the post somewhere. But I think there's a lot of people who do just like going there and getting the slip of paper and putting the cross on it and doing it that way. But at the moment, I think it's just sensible to make sure that there's we don't have to lose a vote because something happens in a mill or whatever.
Yeah.
People do like to go down and make their mark, but it's important to remember that when whatever side you're on and you go in to make your mark, nobody there cares. So they don't care if you come striding in and you're putting your cross because nobody's going to see it anyway, So I get that. I get the feeling that you want to actually physically be there and do stuff, but nobody cares.
Yeah.
And here was me thinking, whenever I go into the postal bureau, whatever, they're all going, "Oh, here's Marlon Halliday coming now," and it always comes.
Jim's waiting patiently there, I think.
Yeah, go on, Jim.
Just a small point. Even if you normally would want to go to a polling station, because of the current situation, you may end up possibly standing in a queue outside the building in torrential rain or something. So if you're willing to do that, fair enough. But if you think, well, it'd be quite good to have your postal vote just in case that was the situation, you should take that into account, especially maybe pensioners. They might be more prone to the problems of torrential rain.
I think one of the reasons why we tried to keep a bit of humour in is we realise that it's quite touchy. You've all touched on it, but people take a great pride in voting. A lot of people take a pride in voting, and we didn't want to accuse people of not caring. But I think it's in both the videos we point out that there's 101 legitimate reasons that can happen on polling day, and you don't get to vote. And I've been around enough elections. I've been to elections where we spent a fortune campaigning, and we chap at somebody's door and get out the vote, and they said, "Was it an election today?" Life is not as a complicated world now, and that's why we try to do it in a humorous way. We tried not to lecture, although there is an element of it when you start getting into the conspiracy things. You have got to take them face on. I suppose the biggest defense, anybody that's really worried about it, ask them just to think, who counts your votes? That's the crucial thing. You've got to remember that the cornerstone of the whole system is they don't bus in special people. There's not an army of a corps of vote counters. The people who open the postal ballots in the council authority offices, and the people who count your votes in the various halls that do it, are your friends. That's who does it. They're the check. That's the greatest check on this being trustworthy. We can laugh and joke, and I can make jokes about the old days, vote early, vote often, and I've been around a lot of campaigns. Trust me. But the biggest check in things being fair is the fact that I've now been in, I can't remember the number of campaigns I've been in Stirling, but I know virtually all the counters. I know them all. I know the chief exec. I know the chief returning officer. I know them. The idea that they would somehow count one, dump two, count another one, dump. So that's the biggest check you've got. That it's secure. These are not special people that are brought into count. These are normal friends and neighbours who work and live in your community, and for 24 hours every few years they process democracy.
Yeah.
And the votes do not go down to England.
The votes do not go down. Okay, so
they all get counted here.
Should we move on to that? Because can you sort of take us through some of the, the more common, myths really about postal voting? I mean, that's one of them, isn't it? That they get taken down to England. I think because sometimes people see an envelope and it's got an English address on it or something.
I think, sorry, Greg can go in as well. I think one of the problems is now there's the processes. Some councils have as I understand it, Stirling Council's not one of these, but some councils have outsourced the processing of the papers going out, right, to the nature of the world, to try and get everything done cheaper. And there is a company down in England that the local authority will give the CD disc, or whatever they give them, the microchip or the USB, with all the qualified people in it, and they will mail out the ballots. The ballots get counted in your council area, though. They don't get counted elsewhere. They get counted in your council area.
Right.
It's your returning officer that's responsible for those votes getting counted. They come back to into the council area and they get counted here.
So that's one gone then. They don't get sent down to England. They don't get tampered with by some sneaky, anti-Scottish or anti-democratic load of people.
Sorry, I'll let Greg get a word in edgeways, but Greg knows why I'll get involved in this. If you think through the logic of it, we'd be granting people with telepathic powers that don't exist. How do you know to open your vote? and change your vote? How do they do this? And does that mean they have to open every vote and find out they voted the right way? They don't. Another thing, how do you get? Just think through the logic of it. If you take a step back to where you are, they don't have. Well, thank God they don't have telepathic person. I think one of our early visions, which was edited out, we said you're accusing people who can't organise bin collections to be able to rig your vote. You know, that had to get edited out because we're not allowed to cast aspersions on people who organise bin collection.
But let's not get into bin collections.
But that's what the conspiracy theory is, you know, that somehow they knew you were a yes vote or you're an independence vote, so they knew you open your letter, open your vote, and take out your ballot paper and put another ballot paper and seal it back up and send. Oh, that's just.
Yeah. Okay, so they don't go down south, or they don't go out of the local. It doesn't even need to be down south, actually. Mm. I mean, you know, they might send the Glasgow ones over to Edinburgh to get counted. I mean, that could be dangerous. So that doesn't happen, right? Just they stay in the local, go to the local council. So, what are any of the other myths that circulate around?
One of the
go on, Greg.
I see quite a lot on Facebook where there's comments from people, and it's usually the same ones come up. And one in particular that comes up is that Ruth Davidson had a peek at the votes, and I don't know quite what they're supposed to make of that. She managed to peek at everybody's vote in every constituency, and then managed to change them somehow. It was a comment she made. I think she made it before the voting closed.
It was on the night, yeah. It was before the ballot closed. And Laura Koonsberg did something similar. Was it at the last general election? She said the Conservatives were convinced they'd won the postal vote, and said the same thing.
So that was, she shouldn't have done that, and that is why the police got involved to investigate what she'd said. But she had no more. You know, she wasn't able to see the votes any more than any of our representatives were at postal vote count. And I believe, Gerry, I didn't know this until we started working on it on the video, but I believe, Gerry, that the people certainly here, the Yes representatives at the count, could see that we'd lost on the postal vote as well.
Oh, we knew we'd lost the postal vote before. I'd go back to 2014. I don't want to. It might help just to. I don't know if it was Alan or Jim made the point about we do have people. We have counting agents. We do witness the ballot papers, the postal votes being open. We meticulously do that, and they take days. They come in over days, and what the local council do, they allocate 2 hours or 3 hours each day, so it can be a 5 or 6. We're always looking for volunteers. If anybody's in Stirling area and want to become a polling agent, just come. We'll put you in charge of looking at the postal ballots getting open. It's good, right? So we witness that, and the things have changed though, because the councils are getting more and more really annoyed with us, because I suppose she's really annoyed with Ruth Davidson and Laura Koonsberg, because in the good old days it used to be quite relaxed. You'd get into a room. I talk from Stirling, but it'll be the same wherever you go. There'll be a postal ballots tend to get counted somewhere in the council offices in a sealed off room that's allocated for the election. And they'll say every 2 day, between 2 and 4 or 11 and 1, they'll tell all the parties, and you come in each day, and then comes the next batch, and they open them up to do just to make sure that they qualify. And that's the one thing you've got to watch with postal ballots. And you actually think it. When I registered for a postal vote, I took a photocopy of the form I filled in, because they do random checks on the signature to make sure it isn't being manipulated. Now, one of the things that came out on the 2014, God help us, God, I'm sure they're doing it for the best. They did 100% verification checks on the signatures. They don't normally do that, but they did it because they didn't want fraud to take place. And they did it again. People remember the 2014 referendum was organised by the Scottish government. All the people were appointed by the SNP government all the way down, right? You've got to remember this. This idea there's a great conspiracy going back to referendum, but in the 2014, although they were only meant to do samples, not meant to, they only need to do samples. All the returning officers decided, because they were worried about fraud, they would do checks. Even then, the number of rejected votes was, I think it was less than, from memory, it was 0.7%. It was an infinitesimal amount of votes that were checked. But in the good old days, you used to be able to see them open this up, check it, and you'd always be able to grasp the ballot paper. You'd always be able to see. And again, if it's a yes, no, it's dead easy to see it's a yes, no. Even if it's a candidate, if you're an experienced polling agent or counting agent, you can quite quickly identify where your person is in the ballot paper. And all you do is you do it in counts of 10. So as they're opening it up, you're just counting. If you get 3 votes out of 10, 3 votes, and you just have a tally sheet. You've just got a tally sheet, and if they're opening up 200 or 300 votes, and you see out of those 200 votes, if you've done 5 or 6 or 7 tallies of 10, you've got a pretty good idea of what your vote's like. Yeah. There's no, I don't want to bore anybody, but it's low level statistics. Right?
Jim,
it's not magic.
Jim, you've got.
Sorry, Jim, I apologise.
No, it's on the same subject. I was looking at the 2015, the new legislation that's been brought in, just a top up, and it actually indicates clearly in the legislation that the way that the ballot papers are to be opened, they're not allowed to be able to see the way people voted. It's all done in a way that nobody who's there is able to see what the vote is. So how can you fiddle a paper if you don't know what the voted was?
Correct. I was just sorry, Jim, you're 100% right. I was just moved. It wasn't the same in 2014, but they've changed the legislation. I have to say, oh God, there's about to be some local authority people listening here. You can still get an idea, right? You can just the physical, because they don't know how the bit of paper's put into the envelopes. If you do enough of them, and because it's random and it's statistics, you can still get an idea. But it's nothing like what it used to be. It used to be you could tell. It was scarily, disappointingly accurate. You could tell to 100 votes. That's how good we were at the end. We could tell to 100 votes, maybe a couple hundred votes, how much we got beat in the postal vote before they even counted the votes on the night. We had a pretty high idea what the vote was. Right.
So basically that thing that Ruth Davidson's comment, and then Laura Kunsberg, that was being said on the top, not because they'd been there doing it, because someone who was watching and has that kind of expertise that you're talking about, someone had passed that on to them, and basically, I was going to say not innocent, but normal. That was just normal information. Yeah,
again, I think we made it clear in the video. What she was getting investigated for wasn't for. It was for disclosing it.
Yeah.
You're not meant to disclose it. When you agree, there's all sorts of things you agree and sign. Polling agents and counting agents are meant to keep things secret. And that's why I'm trying to avoid talking about specific things other than 2014, because everybody talks about 2014. But you're not meant to talk about witnessing the count. It's meant to be confidential in case you well, that's just the way it is. And that's what she breached. The very fact that she talked about it was a breach of the confidentiality around it.
Right.
The other one.
So that's go on, Greg.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just before we went off the subject of the council, the other one people tend to go to is that somehow these boxes aren't secure in the council buildings, and somehow they've been got at by unionists, infiltrate or Tory whatever. Somehow they've got in there in the middle of the night or something and changed them and stuff like that. And you, as Gerry keeps saying, you've got to think about the reality of how possible. I mean, you're talking about wide scale right across the whole country. How would they do that? They're not. It's like there's some kind of Santa Claus of some kind of thing. They can actually get in there and change everything. It's just, and sometimes you're faced with that, and people really think it's because people don't know what actually happens. So you start to invent things. But it's like the old saying about knowledge is power, and the more you know, the more you know, you understand how it does work. Then you do start to roll back on those fears that things like that can happen. It's just fantasy.
Go on, Jim.
Just to follow up on what Greg's saying, I mean, every box, boxes are getting opened over several days at the postal vote, so they are in an office for several days before they're actually counted. But every box that's finished, the agent that's for the candidate is allowed to put their seal on the box. So if anybody tampered with the box, the only way they can get into it is by breaking that seal. So, you know, it's another safeguard
Oh.
that each party has sort of control over, you know.
Any other ones, Greg, we can think of? Oh, hang on, sorry, Alan's got one.
Barcodes was another one. People still referring back to the barcodes. Maybe it's not a big one for this election. I don't know. Would it be the barcodes? Some had barcodes, some didn't.
Well, again, they should all have. It depends. Like it's on you. It's on you to make sure when you get a ballot paper it's marked up correctly. And again, how would they know that? I think if we go back to our film, we're sitting in a poll. You go in to vote in the polling station, and unless you could be decked out in your Yes flags and your Yes badge and your Robert the Bruce T-shirt, how do they know to give you the wrong ballot paper so that it doesn't count? Right? How do they know that you're a Yes voter or you're an SNP voter or you're a Green voter? So we'll give you a ballot paper with no barcode on it, so it doesn't count. Right? It's if you just take, I can understand because the vote is precious to everybody. I understand why people have these concerns, and trust me, I've spent a long part of my life chasing out votes and securing votes. We wouldn't let people steal your vote. You've got to have some confidence in the activists as well. We don't spend days, weeks. Like last election was in December. We were out in the middle of the night. Not last 2019. God, COVID makes everything pass. But 2019 was December election. We were out every night. I was hoping that people wouldn't like actually canvassers coming to their door at 7 o'clock. So we did a sample, and folk loved it. It was crazy. we got better returns. We couldn't get away from people's doors. And I was so disappointed. I mean, I was going to have to go out in the middle of November, December in the freezing COVID. But we had to send one of our street marshals home because he was hypothermic. So the idea that you'd have a group of activists who would spend weeks champing doors, garnering votes, and then say, "That'll be okay. We'll just let them count the vote and it'll be fine." It doesn't work that way. We don't trust them either. We'll make sure the votes get. If you've cast your vote, we're looking down the back of tables as well to make sure nothing slipped away. You know, there's a lot of time and effort of activists. And while I'm on it, so I'm sorry, people. You can feel, I can feel passionate about it. The other thing I see populate a lot of time on Twitter and that is we should bring in independent observers. Well, stuff that for a carry on. I have my own observers. I don't want any independent observers. I want my observers to know the vote.
Presumably that applies. Presumably that applies to the other, the Labour and the Conservative vote. I mean, they'll all want to have their guys there. So on the whole, it's going to even out, isn't it?
Well, I think when you see people, I think that's one of the things about it. Sorry, I'm picking up on it. You guys understand a lot about the voting process, but I can understand things like it's like when you're involved with something, you talk jargon very quickly, and I can understand if people are watching the TV screen at night and they're looking down to account, and you see all these people with some good suits on and some, and you're wondering what are all those people doing? They look official. They almost look like government. They're not. They're all political activists. They're all watching everything that's going on. They're fighting over every vote. This is a very highly. That's why I'm against this computerized system. People can trace paper. Electronic things worry the heck out of me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right,
Alan's been patient.
Just stating the obvious here, I assume that the number of postal votes cast and registered are checked against the number of postal votes requested, and to make sure that there is not more votes cast than requested.
Well, what I can say is the facility is there if parties want to do that.
Yeah. Right?
The facility is there. I can't swear, to be honest, it's the nature of the lose. If you lose by a close election, then you'll go and do that. I'm not going to say I've sat down at every election and going through the mark. Does everybody know, I talk about the marked up register. Does everybody know what I'm talking about, the marked up register?
Maybe you'd better just say what it is.
Right. What? I should get people upset. They'll be convinced Big Brother's watching them. About 6 months after election, 3 to 6 months after election, depending how efficient they've been. Again, your local electoral office you can go and buy, as a political party, you can go and buy a register that records who has voted. So if there's like 35,000 votes cast in the Holyrood elections here in Stirling in May the 6th in total, by sort of September or something like that, I will have the register, and I will see I will know each name of those 35,000 have voted. I won't know how they've voted, but I'll know they've voted. And depending, if I wanted to, I could track it back. I don't want to give away too many secrets here, but obviously I have a canvas that identifies my support beforehand. I then have a register that identifies who's voted. And what I'm interested as an activist is these people who told me they were going to vote for me, and then didn't they actually vote in the day? Right? And there's a lot of that happens. Yeah. I'll give you one example, and I won't name the ward so I don't get held up with the special branch or anything. But it was a council election about 10 years ago, and we did a canvass beforehand, and we identified 15. It was a council election. We identified 1,500 supporters. We identified them down as SNP. So anyway, in the day we got 1,500. I think it was 1,520 or something. But we lost the election by 45 votes. So the council election, which is still quite a big. Anyway, when we got the marked up register back, we were actually patting ourselves in the back, saying this is really good. We identified 1,500 people who were going to vote for us. 1,500 people voted for us. When we went back and got the marked up register 3 months later, of the 1,500 people who actually voted for us, we'd only identified about 700 of them, right? 800 folk who had said they were going to vote for us never actually turned up in the day. You know, they're complete, and that's how I know our vote is no different from anybody else's. But just sorry, I want to go back to it. That's one of the things you can't. No, I'm not going to weave a story here. There's a lot of resources required, so only if you suspect there's something wrong will you go and do that. Yeah. Right? But the facility's there, and that's the biggest check. Right? I know the postal voters, I know if they've voted. I also have a check. Again, if it depends where you are. Like Stirling, we've canvassed so many times here. We can identify a lot of our vote, and we know a lot of our vote. And so
if it was the kind of scenario of in the postal voting count, there's an infiltrator and dozens of postal votes get kind of swept into her handbag. Sorry, I've made it a woman there, but maybe not. Anyway, it gets swept into a bag. That just isn't going to happen. I mean, apart from the fact it would be seen, it would also be picked up with that kind of checking system, wouldn't it?
Well, we checked up in the sense that people would say they voted and not voted. We could pick that up. But again, this would be after the votes were coming out. They should still have to have telepathic powers to know which votes they put in their handbag.
Yeah, right.
That's the big check. You know, these people don't exist.
Yeah. Okay.
Even in special branch.
Yeah. Well, I've maybe got another question. Has anyone else got another kind of doubt in their mind? Jane or Daniel?
No, just that the only objections I've heard is to do with whether their vote would get lost. There's something about actually being there and seeing it go into the box. Mm-hmm. And there's that worry, they might lose it and it might not count. And I don't know how you counteract that.
I don't know how you can check that your vote was counted. I haven't done it, but I believe you can check if your vote has actually been counted. I think you can contact because again, I think that's one of the advantages of it. But it could happen. We're dealing with humans.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what I said. If you look at the videos, we've always taken the view that if you always vote, then fine, right? If you've always through your record, you've always voted. I think there's a lovely scene with Greg's always in his holidays or something like that, where he says, "I always vote," but you didn't vote last time. But if you're a person that's always voted, then great. What we're really talking about here is we all know people. We all know family and friends. Probably close family and friends that you know the day after they're slightly embarrassed because either they forgot or the Coronation Street there was a murder that night, or in the Coronation Street or Emmerdale and you just stayed over in the pit. And that's what we're saying. That group of people who maybe have missed one vote in 4, one vote in 5, just think of getting a postal vote.
Yeah.
That makes all the difference.
Makes
Postal
all the
voters vote.
Yeah.
90%.
Slight caveat to that as well this year, because you don't know if you're going to have to isolate on polling day.
Yeah.
You know, and people, the other one people have been putting out is saying they feel safer getting a proxy vote. Well, A, you're not really sure if your proxy is going to vote your way. You just trust them to do it. And also, what if they're ill on the day and they have to isolate, or just generally unwell and can't get there? So, you know, it's for me, it's belt and braces.
Alan?
It was a point you had raised earlier on, Marlene. If you request a postal vote, you get the paperwork. Can you put it in the ballot box at the polling station?
Yeah, they put it to one side. They put it to one side and bring it in because again the ballot box papers have got to correspond by the papers they release.
Yeah.
So they bring it in. They bring it in. There's an envelope or a seal.
Yeah.
It all depends which council area, and I'm reluctant to. Again, you got to be careful. My experience is almost exclusively in the Stirling council area for the last 40 years. Each council has its own variations on it, but it's a sealed bag. It's identified, and you bring it in, and it's counted there. Because they stuck it straight in the ballot box, it'd be a trouble. Because so if I use, I think Jim's probably more expert in this than I am. I'm getting a bit worried actually. But if you think one of the reasons again that it comes up in the video about the counts, you know, there's all these things about people scoring things. The first count they do is a verification count, because as Jim said several times about the ballot box being closed. Again, I don't know how it's run elsewhere, but we have polling agents who go in regularly during the day, and we ask, as we're entitled to do, we ask how many votes have been cast. So we have a running total on each ballot box, and this is not exact. This is what we do now. Instead, we do this for every campaign. So all during the day, we know it's 123 ballot boxes cover our area. And we have people, we have people at each polling station, and during the day from 10 o'clock onwards, we have them going in at 2 hour intervals and asking the people how many votes have been cast, because we know where, and so we know. So it's not a case of gets to 9 o'clock at night, they can stuff the ballot boxes, because we've been monitoring all the way through here, and they fill in a form at the time. The officials they'll say there's maybe 900 votes were eligible to be cast in that ballot box. But today there was 623 were issued. So they fill in a form. Actually, see 623 or 900. I mean, that accompanies that ballot box to the count. And that's what you see. That's what's called the verification count. And that's where a lot of the political parties gain a lot of the information. That ballot box is emptied onto the table. And that's when we're really concentrating, because the first thing they've got to count is if the sheet of paper says there's 623 votes in that ballot box, that's the first thing they check. And they check the 623 votes. And while they're checking that, we're busy counting the wee groups of 10 to see how many votes and backs of 10 we've got in that 623. And if you're really good at it, you know the election result 3 or 4 hours before it's announced.
Well, Alan.
Just to clarify on that one, on taking your postal vote to the polling station, does it have to be you personally?
No,
you've got me there.
So,
Yeah,
no,
well, I'm building
somebody
up,
can take it in
as
for
somebody
you.
said, if
he's Greg's.
Yeah, somebody can take it in for you.
you can. So
Yeah.
you
It's
take the
also
you can apply for the postal vote, get the paperwork, but if you fall foul of isolating because of COVID, you can give it to somebody else to take it for you on the
Yes.
polling day.
They just go in and hand it to them.
That's fine. That's it.
Yeah.
Just
Does that
clarification
apply?
on
I
that
mean,
point.
mine clearly says you may not vote in person.
You're not really.
Postal vote.
Yeah, you can't go in. You can't turn up and get a ballot paper at the polling station.
But I could take my
Yes.
postal vote.
Postal
in,
vote.
Yes.
right.
You do that.
And sorry, just to say quickly, that's a good reason for getting one as a backup anyway, because
It's-
even though you can't do anything with it on the day, if you've still got it, at least if you knew in advance, a week or so, and under normal circumstances, if you found out you were going to be working or you were on holiday or something, you could just chuck it in the post, and then you don't have to worry about it. My own circumstance one night is I was knocking on doors and it was late, and I realised I hadn't voted, and there was
I had to send you home.
I had to kind of like to go and vote for myself. So if I'd had the postal vote at that point, I wouldn't have worried about it. And it's actually a great thing to have because you've done it, and you didn't have to, especially if you're campaigning as well. If you're going around, you don't have to think about, oh, I have to go there with my wife, and I have to go up to wherever and get that. It's done.
Yeah.
That's the point of why I raised it. I think it's a good idea to apply for it, even if you intend going to the polling station just to hand it in. But it covers all bases if things turn up. Yep. Sorry, Jim, I spoke over it.
Not at all, no. Just when it was mentioned about where the votes are taken, if it's a postal vote to take into the polling station, basically the legislation refers to them as parcels. And again, each candidate can have a polling agent at the polling station, and they're entitled to put their seal on the parcel as well. So again, when that goes to the counting people, that's really, so it's pretty solid.
Yeah, it is indeed pretty solid. What about? Can I ask about the one where, you would hear kind of, anecdotal or maybe even apocryphal wee stories about how, in an old folks residential home and they had postal votes, but one person just filled them out. I mean, I just don't, but I've never believed that, but that's the kind of thing that goes round, doesn't it? I mean, it's just not possible, is it?
There's one thing you've got to think about that. Even if you accept that happened, you don't know who the people are that are filling them in. They could be filling them in for the SNP. They could be filling them in for the Greens. They could be filling them in for, people assume it's always the unionist parties that are doing all the cheating. They're the ones that are using their second homes to get 2 votes.
Yeah, right. I would say a lot on that. And again, Greg's 100% right. The legislation is quite tight in it now. It is very tight. I'm not bragging. I'm a pretty experienced campaigner, and there's a couple of times I've been called. I've been chapping doors and canvassing, going into the last couple of weeks of the campaign. When people have said, "Look, can you help me fill in this form?" and I've not touched it with a barge pole. It's too dangerous. There's not a private spot in the world now. You got to think of this. Everybody's got smartphones, right? This is what I brief all my activists. I said, you've got to be aware that when you're out working and either getting support or this, you've got to be aware that everything you're doing could be photographed. And if there were people going around harvesting votes, I'd bet my bottom dollar there'd be a film of it on the internet that night. It's just the way of the world.
Can I just quickly add something to what I just said there? I remembered something else that somebody observed as well, is that people assume that folks living in care homes don't have all their faculties, and they don't know what they're doing, and that's not always the case. There's a lot of people in there who've got all their marbles, and so you can't assume that because it's a care home they're just going to be unaware.
Smartphones.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, they're all our age, and we've all got, we're all sitting here with smartphones, so, don't try it. Jim, you had your hand up there, and I think maybe we need to bring this to a close. But Jim, do you want to say anything?
The other thing is the signatures have got to match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When they register for the vote, the personal signature, so somebody can't just sit in an office and take all these sheets and fill them in. We'd have to get individuals all to sign them and their signature to match the registered signature. So.
You're spot on. It's a big thing, and again, it came out. I don't want to keep referring, but with the prospect into F2 coming up, I suppose a lot of the comments we've touched on the postal voting refers back to into F2, and a point of complaint a lot of people made was that their vote didn't count because it says a signature didn't match. What people got to remember is you can't have it both ways. If you want the postal vote to be secure, then there has to be a check. And the advice I always give to somebody is, if you're like me, and Greg will laugh at us, I've got about 5 or 6 different signatures.
I didn't know that.
Right? I used to be in a job in senior management where I used to think the only reason they paid me so much money was for my signature. That's what I basically did, right? I'd sign off projects, sign off this. So I had one signature that I think my wife called it, not even a dead spider crawling across an ink blot, but and there's the other one I have is my Sunday signature, which is my signature, and I make sure my postal vote one, it's my Sunday signature, so I can replicate it. The spider one I couldn't replicate, to be honest. It depends what mood I'm in. There's a squiggle on my pen, but you have to admit that's a check. That's not a negative. The fact that they're checking your signatures.
Yeah.
I've got a photograph of my signature that I put on my registration form that I dig out, and I have to go, where is it? What folder is it in? I try and find my when it comes in this time again. Just because mine kind of varies. Probably not enough that they would question it, but I just like to make sure, right? Oh, that's how I did it. Because mine.
See, he's a high tech member of the partnership. He's got it in his phone. I've got a photocopy.
Aye. Oh, I've got it on my phone. Actually, I took a photograph of my signature because mine can vary a bit as well. Actually, so Daniel, I'm just wondering, is there anything you want to add in before we go?
I'm quite happy. I'm enjoying the chat, actually.
Great.
I had a very poor night's sleep last night, so
With excitement.
I'm sitting here quietly just absorbing, so keep going, guys.
So Daniel, do you remain convinced now? You said
I think I love going and voting. I've done it now for 56 years. I've voted for 56 years, and I love the idea of going in and make my cross. And I also love going up to the Conservative candidate, shaking his hand and saying, "I didn't effing vote for you, pal." It's always been a spiteful thing I've enjoyed.
Get on,
I think I'm quite convinced.
I may have to edit that little snippet out once it goes on the website, but
Sorry.
it has just gone out live to Facebook, Daniel. So
We have to make apologies now. Apologies to everyone who was offended by that.
Anyone who was
Anybody offended? Tough.
By the word
that
Tory.
was the Edinburgh and Lothians Pensioners for Indy Group.
And if
So
anybody has
look,
been,
I
if
think
anybody's been affected by this conversation, here's a number to phone.
Marlene, there's one more big argument that I could put forward that kind of introduces our next video that we've kind of semi-released, which was made with Bruce Crawford, our MSP, Alan Smith, MP, and our candidate, Evelyn Tweed. And the way I had them do it is, obviously they're all at home, and I had them record it. Gerry wrote the script, and I got them to record it as if they're all on the same Zoom call. So the screen looks very much like what you're looking at the moment. So there's 3 boxes, there's a 4th box, which may contain, I'm not allowed to say,
You're shameless, Drysdale.
may contain a special guest being slotted in.
Now she's been exonerated.
Too much. Tells me
Too
not
much
to-
information.
Well, we're in the negotiations at a later stage. That's all.
So basically they have the whole point is about you getting a postal vote, and for me, and I know because I've seen people saying it online. They've been saying, why don't the people, in government tell people to get a postal vote? Well, they do, but you've got the people who count on your vote the most, who rely on you voting for them the most, are actually on this video saying, get a postal vote. Yeah. And for me, that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest argument for getting them. Because if those guys think it's safe, with the information that they're party to, if those guys think it's safe, then who are we to question it? If I've got our candidate, Evelyn Tweed, asking us to get a postal vote, I'm going to do it because she wants to win. And I want her to win. So
great.
And that video, I'll send you the link to that.
Taught you well, Greg. Taught you well.
The current version, thank you, Gerry. Did I mention it?
I didn't have to say anything. You took my summary away. Brilliant.
That's the mark of a good mentor, Gerry.
Yeah, perfect. It's almost perfect.
I always think, what would Gerry do? That's always my philosophy.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I think we'd better just.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, thank you both for coming, giving you of our time and giving your own time. And it's been really good hearing that, and it's good for us getting a chance to lob a few questions at you. So once again, yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
very
We'll get away.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll after this is finished, I'll put those links up to the videos on our Facebook group
I'll
page.
send that.
Yeah,
And
fantastic.
thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks,
Yeah.
folks.
Thank
We'll,
you.
we'll leave you. Right.
Thank you,
Cheers.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now, guys.
Oh, Jerry's gone, right. I better go as well.